So hello, Sean. How are you? Greetings from Los Angeles, sir.
Thanks for having me, Andy. It must be great to have nice weather out here in Chicago. We are in a downpour of rain and stuck inside.
Interesting move. I mean, like all you had to do is just ditch your family and friends in Chicago, like I did, and move to Los Angeles, and have awesome weather all the time.
Well, Andy, I think it's funny you bring that up. I have a feeling a lot of people want to know if they need to move out to LA if they want to work in fields that we work in.
Yeah. Well, that's a good
How's that
question to
transition?
pow out. I guess
Yeah.
the question is for you is like, what has your experience been like in Chicago so far since graduating from film school?
That is a question I get a lot, and I think it's an important one. And I'm very interested to know if you agree with what I say, because I'll tell you, there's two elements of staying in Chicago, and one's really good and one's really bad. In Chicago, I think there's a huge untapped market of companies, businesses, whether it's law firms, hospitals, schools, that don't have this kind of mid to upper tier access for video production companies. You don't get the giant companies that exist in LA or Atlanta or New York because it's harder out here. There's less, but there's still a decent amount. So I think that there's a lot of untapped business potential here. Where I
Right.
think Chicago sucks, and correct me if I'm wrong, in Chicago, you don't have the creative sphere. You don't go out to a bar and meet five other people that love making movies and want to collaborate with you. So in Chicago, it's a lot harder to, you have to force yourself to get your creativity going. Otherwise, it'll fall to the wayside. Even if you are making a living doing what you like, you got to make sure that you're pushing towards what you love.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. I think that, if you're especially when you're just starting out like you were and we all were essentially after we graduated. And right now, like we're by no means experts, but we've definitely had a few years in the industry, like full time making livings as video creators and photographers. The one point you hit on, which is awesome, is that like since there isn't so much competition, you're right. Like a lot of businesses need marketing material. They need videos done, whether it's website content or all of that. So like if there's less competition and you're kind of the go-to person, then I feel like that's a huge perk of being in a smaller city. But your second point of not really being surrounded by creatives, have you taken steps to like kind of find that community at least? Because I would say like before you answer that, like in Los Angeles, it's the polar opposite where pretty much everyone you meet is an aspiring creative, whether they're in music or a lot of film people, a lot of music video stuff. Like it's it's Los Angeles, right? So uh, what would you say like your efforts have been in trying to like find that creative community in Chicago?
Yeah, I'd say it's not easy, but there are ways to do it. Right? You can. I just took a walk today, and I brought my camera and a gimbal just to see what would happen. And there's an element of if people aren't going to force you to be creative, you got to get up off your own ass and go be creative, right? And that's not just taking a camera outside; it's start reaching out to people. Find people. Once you find people, encourage them to go out. Make sure that it doesn't matter if you have a network of 20 people that all have cameras if you guys aren't getting together and using them, right? So you do, if you're not going to be in LA, where we have to just admit that there are more go-getters in LA, people that are going to try and make it big. You've got to bring that same energy to Chicago, and you may have to bring extra for the people around you, because if not, they're just going to stay inside.
Do you feel like it's like more of a struggle to get motivated, or do you think it's a good thing that you have to force yourself to get motivated and you have to bring that energy? Because I think that's a valuable skill as well.
I agree. It's a valuable skill. I think it can be exhausting at times. And I think there are times where you just kind of punt on it. A positive aspect, I think that when I'm making videos at work and I'm working with people for clients during my 9 to 5, knowing that we don't have this crazy music video on the weekend or something like that does encourage us to kind of value our time more during the work week and really push that to the limits, if that makes sense. I've done an interview for a school and had lighting that I'm really proud of and would put in my demo reel. Did I have to do it like that? Probably not. I could have just shot it normal. The client
Right.
wouldn't have
Right.
cared. But so there's an element of yeah, almost like Chicagoans are going a little stir crazy because there's not other stuff going on, right?
Gotcha. Yeah, that's interesting. Do you think you would ever think about like evolving to a place like, say, New York, Los Angeles, or I guess even Atlanta, uh, to just be surrounded by more creative communities? Because I mean, one side note is that like sometimes like just from being out here and networking with so many people over the past 3 years I've been out here, things will just like randomly sneak up and just someone will be like, just grab me because something's happening and be like, hey, we need an AC this weekend. Like I can give you like $200-300 for a day. Like, and this is like Friday night at 11 p.m., you know? So I feel like there's a lot more of that out here, but I don't think that it's like totally necessary, right? I think that like if you're still actively creating those communities, am I basically on the nail? Like you can still get opportunities, or is it just a little harder?
Yeah, there's definitely opportunities, and I think you should elaborate on this as well. But to me, I made a decision when I did not move to LA, uh, that I wanted to
There's still
really
time,
make
Sean.
my own.
There's still
There
time.
is still time. We are both young, but I kind of decided I didn't want to try going that route where I grind for 10 years really hard working under someone. And not that everyone in LA does it, but I think that's the most realistic outcome for me if I had moved to LA. So yeah, I'm taking a different angle towards a similar goal where I find it easier to try and create a creative community here than to have a creative community in LA and fight against a stacked deck, right? I think it's way more likely that I'll find an investor here that'll give me $10,000 for a short film or something like that versus LA. A potential investor is probably dealing with 10 people a day contacting them, asking them for money, right?
Right. It's definitely a lot more competitive. But so far I have not seen that kind of watered down just the sheer amount of opportunities because there's just so much going on always here because it is pretty much the hub. And I would say that like, if you're happy, then you can make it work. Right. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
However, one thing that really is intoxicating about being out here is the creative community and the sheer amount of opportunities that are available. Mentioning like the past points where like you never know when an opportunity is going to come up. They'll just come up out of nowhere. That's one reason. But the second reason is really like that there's so much variety there's such a variety of talent out here as well. Like if you needed a dancer for a video, if you needed shooting setting varieties too, like if you needed to go to the desert, if you needed to go to the mountains or the ocean or the city, like you all have it in this whole area, which is kind of cool. But that doesn't really knock off
Well, I
of
think
like
it's a really
studio
good point.
shoots.
Right. I think that something that Chicago does lack and cannot really be made up for is a lack of high end expertise. Um, I don't think it's bad to admit I don't have like a crazy professional mentor that I'm following, right? There's no one to go to if I am like, how can I innovate this shoot? No one's done this stuff before here, and maybe they never will. In LA, I'm sure you have resources at your disposal.
Yeah.
So even when you're making a community out in the Midwest, be it Chicago or somewhere else, you are kind of hamstrung by you only know as much as you know. You're not going to get a favor from someone who's DP'd a Hollywood film to come work with you or to teach
Yeah.
you stuff, right?
So what would be your future plans essentially? Do you think that you could see yourself moving out somewhere, or are you just kind of comfortable in your space right now?
Yeah, I think we've both had experiences where we've traveled around for shoots, and I think the further and further we go through time, the easier it gets to travel for videos, right? So to me, without getting too specific about what appeals to me, the idea of making money in Chicago and maybe taking 2 to 4 trips a year for big creative projects, be it in New York or LA or Austin or Atlanta, anything like that. That's kind of what I want to get to that point. Right now, I've got obviously the Chicago making money part, but not so much the
Yeah. What do you
creative
think?
outlet part.
what do you think the best route to do that is? Because so I'll add one thing is I have one friend that kind of does that. I shouldn't say friend, more of an acquaintance that I've worked with before, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and he works for a creative agency, and they're a production agency, and he actually lives in, I think, Vancouver in Canada.
Yeah.
And while the creative agency is bidding on projects, and he's basically at home in Canada, but until they have like a project that's going into actual production, then he'll fly into Los Angeles for the duration of the project. And he seems to be very happy doing that. And
Mm-hmm.
that's one option for sure. I think that like the way I look at it though is like I have to be out here making those connections with those types of agencies in person, and trying to like make like an in-person connection to get my foot in the door, instead of trying to like basically develop the best portfolio that you host on a web, and then on the web, and you try to pitch that to agencies for it. I personally have just found that like in-person relationships are like super, super important. And you never know
Yeah.
where those connections are going to get employed or bring you into.
Definitely. I mean, I think you look at our differences in personality, right? You're much more of a go up to anybody and talk to them kind of
A
person.
little bit too much, right?
No comment. Those stories are for another podcast we'll do.
Right.
But and I think that's completely valid, and I think you're in the perfect spot to be doing that. I am not someone that likes to go out and schmooze and do that stuff. I'm much more happy to attach myself to a few people I really believe in and work with them to get to the top. Um, and I think that is much more achievable anywhere in the world, right? It's
Right.
easier to find a small team than a big team, obviously,
Yeah.
or a large network of people that you need
Right.
to rely on.
So speaking of that, when you said like basically make it to the top as a general like metaphor, right? Like what does that actually mean to you, or are you still trying to figure that out? Like what's your ultimate end goal? Because that might differ from person to person, right? Like I like short form content the most. I like branded cinematic content. I like music videos, and like I don't think until like I had years and years and years of experience, then I would move on to features.
Mm-hmm.
But right now my main interest is short form content that like I can just pound out 2 to 3 minute videos, or hell, even like short TV show type things I would be into. But how does that different from your vision?
Well, I think it's proof that we're the little ADD generation, because I also tend towards short things.
Yeah.
I think ultimately my goal is I've got a bunch of pretty dumb ideas racing around in my brain at all times, and I'd love to uh, get those out in a way that is collaborative with people. I'd love to pitch companies on, I've got this idea for a short, like let's try and integrate your company to this. You guys fund it. It's going to bring you clients, but also show a story that I care about, something like that.
Right.
Um,
So would
that's
you
the
say
goal.
that
And like
like
I said, yeah,
cinematic storytelling, but for brands, or
I'm not going to say for brands specifically, just because, if someone comes and gives me $1 million, I'm not going to still hunt down brands for
right,
a project.
right,
Um, I think that brands do often have interesting things to say, especially when it's like you're in Chicago. Here in Chicago, I'm not dealing with Coca-Cola. I'm dealing with a mom and pop store or a law firm that has an interesting case that they want to, tell the story of. There are personal stories behind everything, and telling those is fun. But yeah, I don't know. Wherever the money is, right? Like
well,
if I
that's
start
that's
making
the
shorts to make
balance.
money, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not going to say I need to make commercials. I'm not, I'm a
Right,
avid
right,
Toyota Prius fan, but I'm not dying to make the next Prius
right. So like
commercial.
like every filmmaker, we're in it for the craft, we're in it for the storytelling, we're in it for like the effect we have on others, right? So whatever essentially enables you to be able to pursue that is what's gonna prioritize.
Totally. All I care about at the end of a day is one, I love being on shoots. It's fun to be on a set. I love the shared experience of going into battle metaphorically with a team. And I love sitting back afterwards and saying, damn, we did everything we could to make the best thing we could, and it looks awesome. Like, we're all really proud of this. That's
Yeah.
what matters to me.
Yeah, that shit gets me going, dude. Like, I kind of relate it to, I'm not like super into sports anymore, but when I was young, I would play like Little League Baseball or Little League Football. And like, it's kind of like that feeling right before the game starts, you know, or like the pregame adrenaline to like a production set is intoxicating to me, dude. I love that. Like, you're right. All right, this is my team, and these are the people that are they're gonna hopefully carry out this awesome vision we've been putting a lot of effort into. Let's see how it
Mm-hmm.
goes. Like, it's do or die, and that's what really like gets me so stoked, man. I love that.
Yeah, to stick with the sports comparison about what we've just talked about, it's like Tom Brady, he could have gone to the biggest market in the world and competed against the best of the best immediately, and that's the LA way, right? Or he could have gone to a bad team and tried to drag it up as far as he could, and making it to the playoffs once and celebrating. And in a lot of ways, that's Chicago. But I think the ultimate takeaway is that it doesn't ultimately matter where you are. It may lead you down different paths, but as long as you're putting in the time and the energy and you have the focus, anything can be achieved anywhere, right?
Yeah, 100%, man. Awesome. I really appreciate those insights. I'm gonna let you get going, and I'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Yeah, let me know when you need me back, when the
Yeah, dude.
audience demands me back.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice, man. All right, take care, dude.